Welcome to Margin Business Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. So today it will be a bit different. We have Ryan Cramer from Crossover Commerce, the partnership manager at Ping Pong. And we won't talk about any story today or any work-related things, obviously work-related, but this is the fun part we're going to talk about. So we talk about podcasts. Ryan has done a lot of podcasts. I cannot follow up at all. It's just impossible. I'm now catching up a little bit. I mean, like I will do it like once a week, but still we're not at Ryan's level. So as Ryan has now a lot of experience, I wanted to ask him a few questions about podcasting. So Ryan, what do you think, or in general, what is your opinion in your experience, what makes a good podcast? I mean, there is a few points I'm sure you will mention, and how to keep something like around how we keep the public engaged, how we have more people come to your podcast, and what does it take to make really good podcasts like yourself?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks you, Omar, for the invitation. It was kind of you to say those words. You were one of the first people I had on my show, so this is kind of full circle, believe it or not. So starting a podcast, it's been less than a year since I've started Crossover Commerce, right? It kind of happened. Maybe this will kind of paint a picture on why I started a podcast, and we can kind of go into my tips, if you will, of started last September or so, or September, October. And basically, since we're a global company, I had a question asked from our China team that said, hey, do you know anyone who would answer XYZ? It happened to be under copyright.
Hi. Sorry to interrupt your video. I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate you watching this video right now. And I want to let you know what Margin Business can offer to Amazon sellers. We offer Amazon listing optimization and translation to Amazon sellers who want to sell more on the European marketplaces. Now, enjoy your video. Sorry, one more thing. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Right. Thank you.
There's lots of like trademark stuff that was going around that they wanted to just understand so they can avoid any sort of problems of there as Amazon sellers do. So I said, let me check. I might know a couple people. So I went around my network, reached out and asked a couple people. And the first person I asked at the time was Rob Stanley, who's now over at Gatita.
Yes.
He at the time was with Feedback Wiz, and I said, hey, it'd be great if you knew anyone, I would love to interview them. He goes, hey, well, I run a podcast for Feedback Wiz. What if we both did it? I know this person, Jeff Schick, over at Ralston Schick. He's very well versed in this space. So I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. We scheduled a time. It was all very like thrown around times and dates of messaging. It was very unorganized on my end, but we did something like this where we just scheduled a Zoom call. It was going to be recorded. It was going to be polished. We had some questions ahead of time. And first off, I was late. I was already late to our recording. So number one tip, be on time or be early. So that'd be right. But I was very like hesitant, and I think that's the number one thing that a lot of people tend to think it gets in their way of interviews or any sort of kind of conversation like this is I as a host I'm in charge basically. So I'm in charge of facilitating conversation flow. So my job is to have a point of view, of course, but also what do I want to get out of this episode? So as I was interviewing, I was asking these questions. It didn't feel right to me, to be honest. My first episode was very question focused. It was very much read off a list, and it wasn't very. That's not my style. It felt. So I went back to Rob, and he would say, "I have my own podcast. I really can't do this too often, but I really liked it. I liked the nuance of asking people questions, learning along the way, but then also getting to get my own kind of like personal coach, if you will, on behalf of the audience who's going to listen to this." And, it was, I thought it was successful in the first regard, but I wanted to do it a little bit differently. So I said, I'm going to host this myself, kind of pick it up and call it my own journey, or like my own podcast on behalf of Ping Pong. Came up with the name Crossover Commerce because, believe it or not, the nuance of it is in ping pong, the sport, the weakest point of your game is the crossover from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand. So like the right to left or left to right. So like the backhand to the forehand in tennis. And so I felt that was a very cool concept because the weakest part of like education or just my business, I can maybe dive into that kind of ecosystem, if you will. So that was kind of where the name came from. And then kind of what I was really hesitant on is, do I actually have a point of view? Do I have authority to share with people? And my number one tip for people is, of course you do. And it was almost like it was this lack of feeling that I was good enough to be able to present these facts to people and being able to hang with them, or being able to say, I'm an expert in this field. And by no means am I an expert in one field. I happen to be a student of all fields. So with that being said, my background actually comes into effect, and it really paints this really cool picture that no one else can tout. No one else can express or really come from my perspective. So I do have my vantage point, if you will, is an asset for me. So I really started to believe that as I started to go on. But podcasting is really interesting. I've learned a lot about it. My efforts to grow it and to do better. I started going live on channels, and we were just talking about this beforehand. It's this nuanced thing of people can call on you, ask questions. Hopefully everything is right with technology. Yeah. There's no hiding behind anything. There's no editing. If I sound like an idiot or I sound like a fool, I do. And that's kind of, I'm okay with that, because that's open and honest and raw. And I feel like that's the best part of my show. But I started asking people who I felt very passionate that would bring lots of value. So I started simply just messaging people, hey, I have a concept in place. I wasn't even calling a podcast. I have a concept in place of, I want to know more about Amazon e-commerce space. And I know there's other shows about it, but I think that I can have a different viewpoint. Would love to get you on just to pick your brain, if you will, if you're open to that. And people started saying yes. A lot of people say yes to the podcast, which is kind of funny and fascinating in itself. But the more I started asking people, the more my schedule started booking up. So I started automating it of, hey, go find a time that works best for you. That's the only one of the day. It takes a lot of time, as you know, to produce podcasting. But in the same time, it allows me to set aside time of my day to interact with individuals like yourself, to understand and learn and grow with people in a topic of conversation, and just kind of like me sitting down one-on-one if we're in the same room and people are just listening in on us. So that's kind of the beauty as how my show grew. And now it's over 135 episodes I've done to date. Anywhere from I was crazy as done as many as 6 in 1 week. I've done as few as 2. And I think last week was the only week to this year that I haven't done at least 1 a week, every week. So it was kind of weird to not do it that week and kind of getting going again. But that would be another tip I would share with the audience, would be, if you're looking to start a podcast, consistency is key. So being able to share audio format or share content with your audience, they can know that they can rely on you to like either tune in live, or that they can go back and look for new content. They can subscribe to you, whether it's 1 episode every 2 weeks, or it can be 1 episode a day if you're that maybe crazy like people have said I am. I mean, it really depends on your schedule, right, and what you want to get out of it. So there's a lot of benefits from podcasting, and just kind of learning as you grow, and you can tweak as you go. And the more you share, the more you're kind of learning, the better you get. And it's my true and honest opinion.
I think it's really clear and really straightforward. The podcasting for me, it's exactly what I would really say to people if they ask it. What makes a good podcast? It's exactly these points what I would bring, because people think too much about, like, do I sound stupid? Because it's exactly what you said, do I sound this? Who cares? If you think you can do it, just do it, you know? I mean, obviously you need to talk about something, but even if you're not an expert in something, you can still talk about it, you know? If
Right.
you
I
feel
hate my
good,
voice.
and yeah,
I hate the sound of my voice. And that was the thing. I was like, I'm not sure if people would just be turned off by my voice, but that's just me. That's just my own personal opinion. I hear differently than what people hear. But to be honest with you, this is what I think makes a good podcast. If you're asking me, Omar, is to have your point of view be broad enough, not pigeonhole yourself into like very specific nature, because you want to be like flexible and maybe go outside of it. What makes a good podcast is feeling comfortable with yourself, A,
yeah,
and then B, just being confident enough to ask questions along the way, because multiple formats you can look this up. It's like the basics of, do you have a guest host? Do you have a one-on-one conversation? Do you have preset questions? Do you have a roundtable discussion? There's all these different forums that you can kind of set up in a podcasting way, but each of it has to be comfortable to you as a host, because you have to do it constantly over and over again, and people will adapt to that nature. So, yeah, the best way to podcast host is set expectations, saying this is what I'm planning on doing. This is how I view this going. There's certain questions you want me to ask, I can, but otherwise, or topics to cover. Otherwise, it's going to be very free flow, me and you in a virtual room, if you will, and we press record and we go.
I think there is as well one important point, because many people, when they invite, for example, somebody, they don't set up the correct like reminders and everything. And because we are all very busy. If we don't have our reminders popping up in the morning and know what's on our schedule, we might miss something, or we might come late, or I think it's very important to have a very good scheduling system in place, which send, for example, reminders. I think you're very good in that. You even have a list where everything is written down there, what to expect, what to bring with you, microphone, headset. It's simple things, but with somebody stressed, you might forget even about all of this, So this is something I think is really good as well, to prepare the person mentally and to say what to do. And I think this makes as well a very, very good podcast.
Well, and that's the thing. And Omar, to kind of add on to that too, a lot of people don't. Podcasting hasn't been like, it's not a foreign concept. I think it's become really popular lately in terms of amplified marketing, right? There's lots of different ways. As marketers, you and I both know that there has to be different ways for people to get in front of individuals. So I think this is why it's so nuanced that you see more and more popping up. I just happen to do it, and I'm crazy enough to do it as much as I'm doing it, but there's other people who are doing the exact same thing as me. They just have different formats, and I actually respect them. It's asking people, hey, would you mind doing this? But they also have their own networks and systems in place, which I've actually, there's no like hidden secrets. I've actually took some great things away from being guests on podcasts. Say, I really like that format, or I really like how they reached out, how they reminded me, or they preset these questions, or they inserted a commercial, if you will, or things like that, where it's super fascinating to me to constantly learn and grow. And with this industry, it is amplified marketing. It's not like a specific form of marketing. It's getting a voice out there to educate audiences, which again, in video and audio, people are constantly either at home or they're working out. They're constantly listening to something. So it's a really great way to get knowledge out there to people, but then also to just learn and grow from other people. I didn't used to listen to podcasts before I started, and I only listened to a few just to kind of, and it's not even in my industry necessarily. It might be just something humorous and kind of just to get myself thinking in different ways. And that's why I really want to push myself, as to how do I continuously not edit myself, but how do I add on to the assets and the skills that I already have in place. I mean, I do a lot of self-listening to make sure that I'm not saying or lots of weird
this is very
pauses.
hard, yeah.
But you also have to understand too, is this is also going to help you with public speaking. I believe like when we get back to conferences or to other sort of events, that if you can hone in your speaking skills and really slow down your heart rate, think about, again, these tips are pretty common out there. I've always learned that it's think 2 sentences at a time, slow down. If you need to take a pause, it's not as long as you think it is, and really converse and use your hands. Definitely think about what you're going to say before it sounds or and it doesn't sound cohesive enough. That's where like editing comes into play, obviously.
Yes,
But the
I love
other
it.
thing is to be the other great thing is to be an active listener. I know, and I've been a part of shows that they won't listen to you when you're speaking to them, or I really hate it when people invite me to a call or a conversation. This is in general. And then they're completely focused and looking at a monitor away from me, and they're not actually listening. I could say anything, and they were like, yep, sounds great. I want to be an engaged host. I want to understand and say, listen, I didn't quite understand that. Do you mind repeating that for me? Because if I'm not understanding it, my listener's not understanding that either. So making sure you're speaking on behalf of your listener and kind of being that advocate as well is also very important.
And this is as well what I think it's a learn and grow. You know, this is what you just sum up all together. Learn and grow, learning from different podcasts, learning from different things, and as well grow, because you grow with the person you're listening to. What the experience what this person had, you can actually get it for you. And this is what I find things is so amazing in a podcast like yours, because you can really like take the best pieces of the person's personality, take it in, think about it, you know, because if they have done it, you can do it. We are all humans. We all have the same time frame during our day. And this is exactly what I think the audience should get. And what makes a great podcast is that they really can learn and grow from it. I have a question for you. What I wanted to ask, you have 131 episodes, right?
135, yeah.
135. What?
There's more coming.
I know. You're relentless. That's incredible. Do you remember something where it was like a really funny situation live? I mean, like in the like.
Yeah. So a couple things come into place. I've been on mute before, where I'll put myself on mute to either like take a sip of water or put myself off screen, and I've not unmuted myself, and then I'll have like a saying, I think you're on mute, and it's really awkward. I mean, of course, there's the concept of either not forgetting the name, but mispronouncing the name or the business. And I've done that before, whether it's I just psych myself out and I just go for it, and it's completely wrong. And I second guess myself. That's been funny. I've been called out for that. But just friends, they're like, no, it's not how it's pronounced. It's this. And so that's been funny. I've swung my arm pretty wide, and I've knocked over pins and just like stuff off my desk. And that's been kind of embarrassing, but it's nuanced. We're all working from home now. It's kind of the nature of the beast of we're all human. I don't like to edit that stuff out. I think it's kind of funny and nuanced.
It is
for the listener. But then also, since we're working from home, it could be my son walks in or my dog is grumbling or barking or things like that. So it's kind of annoying, but it happens. Yeah, it happens. And so those are really the true like gaffes, if you will.
Okay.
I try to hold myself in and try to set myself up for success. And because I've done this so many times, I feel like I'm in my own bubble and don't go outside of that yet.
No, this is because it's something I was thinking about, like bloopers best off or something, like, because I'm editing myself all the time, and I keep them in a I keep
those are some of the best, but that's authentic. It's authentic, and it shows the human side to you. So it's I'm sure I've times that I'm like, I just catch myself in a daze, but then that's the thing about doing it live too, is very fascinating in terms of the mindset. When it's editable, that you can just like, oh, I'll cut that out, like don't worry about it. But when it's not live, I have to be on it. I have to be focused in that nature. But then also, I don't want to sound boring to people too. So I want to be engaging in the fact that even though it might be a topic I've covered multiple times, like I've talked to in the Amazon space, for example, there's so many different aggregators. Well, there's only so many different ways you can ask a question. Why did you decide to get into the business? Or what is it that fascinates you about, building brands and growing in that regards. But each of them are nuanced in their own story. That I go for more of the what drives them, what's kind of their background, what makes them tick. Every person's different. So what do I want to get out of it is make sure that I set expectations, but then also what do I want to learn and grow from in that regards? What's different? How can I, if I heard something over here, maybe I can ask that question and say, what do you think about this in that regard? So there's always ways to improve upon and not feel stale. And that's why I think it's exciting about the space is that even though you can only talk about keyword research so many different times or PPC or whatever it might be, there's always different things and approaches you can take with those topics.
I mean, we grow all together in this space. We listen to a lot of stuff. Myself, I listen to a lot of stuff, and like I said, learn and grow. And we are always students, as you mentioned. It's like that. We're learning every day, and we try to help people as well to learn with us. And we grow to a big community. Amazon space, international e-commerce space is a baby for me. It's going to grow into an adult, and when it grows to an adult, we will be all of us huge. So thank you so much for replying to this question and to explain to us what a great podcast looks like. I mean, you have a great example, 135 episodes already. Thank you for your advice. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.